Hello everyone, this is Mrs. Gonzalez-Clark. Today we are going to talk about volume. How do we find volume and how does volume compare to area? Now I know in the past, I'm sure you've heard of the term area. An area is a measurement that we use only for flat shapes. Shapes that only have two dimensions, 2D shapes, two measurements. So area is equal to length times width. And what we do when we find the area is we're finding the measure of how much space there is in this flat surface. Now, we're not focusing on two-dimensional shapes now. We are moving on to three-dimensional shapes. So a three-dimensional shape is special rather, because not only does it have the length and width, but it also has the height, which is why it's called three-dimensional, 3D, because it has a length, it has a width, and it has a height, which gives us three dimensions, three measurements. Now we are going to look at a three-dimensional shape, a rectangular prism to be exact, and we are going to find what is the length, what is the width, and what is the height of this three-dimensional shape, okay? Again, this shape is three-dimensional because there is a length, there is a width, and there is a height, okay? So we're going to see how we can find that length, that width, and that height. So, I'm just trying to give you a view of this shape all around, okay? So, we're going to look at each layer of this shape. So as you can see, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 layers to this shape. I'm going to take one of these layers off. Okay? So we're going to imagine that this is the base of the three-dimensional shape that we're working with, the rectangular prism. And we're going to look to see what is the length and what is the width and the height of this three-dimensional shape. So, if I have a three-dimensional shape, a rectangular prism, which is what I have now, the length is how long it is across. The width is how wide it is. And the height, obviously, is how tall it is. So we have our length, our width, and our height. So looking at this figure, we can see that our length is 3. Because across we have 3 unit cubes. I'll take them apart so you can see. So we have 1, 2, and 3. So the length to this layer is 3. 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to look at the width. How wide is this shape? So if I turn it to the side so we can see the width, we'll see that we have 2 unit cubes that make up the width. We have one here and we have one here. And now we're going to look at the height. So looking at the height, we see that since it's one layer, then it's only going up 1 unit cube. Therefore, our height is 1. Okay? Now, in order for us to find out how many cubes are in this entire layer, yeah, you can just count it, but sometimes you're not going to be in a situation where you're going to have these cubes in your hand where you can just count them. That's when we have to multiply. So we take 3 and we multiply it by 2 and 1. So we're taking the length, the width, and the height, and we're multiplying all together, which gives us 6. So therefore, there are 6 unit cubes in one layer of this rectangular prism. Now remember, the rectangular prism I showed you initially had more layers. So I'm going to put another layer, another layer, and another layer. Now we know that each layer is equal to 6 cubes. It has 6 unit cubes for each layer. So if there's 6 unit cubes for one layer, then we know each of the other layers have 6 unit cubes. So 6, 6, and 6. Therefore, if we find the total volume of this entire rectangular figure, we know that 6 times 4, or 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6, gives us 24 cubic inches squared. Sorry, cubed. Okay, so 24 cubic inches, or you can write it as 24 inches cubed. Okay, so the entire volume of this figure is 24 inches cubed. The cube represents the 3 dimensions of the figure. Now, if we look at this entire figure, the length of this entire figure is still 3. The width is still 2. But the height changes because we added extra layers to this figure. So the height is 1, 2, 3, 4. Now if we take all of these numbers, we get 6 times 4, which gives us 24, which is the volume of this figure. Now just so you can see, I'm going to decompose this figure just so you see. Here's 6 unit cubes. Here's another 6 unit cubes. Here's another 6 unit cubes. And here's another 6 unit cubes. Thus giving us our volume of 24 cubic inches. So what we did was, we took a figure and we broke it down. We figured out what the dimensions were in this figure, and we used those different dimensions, the measurements of each of those dimensions, to figure out what was the volume of the entire rectangular prism.